I came on today because I wanted to talk to everyone here about what I like to call the 20% rule. This is not a rule I made up. I claim no ownership to this. But I am going to start by talking about running, and then we will see how this connects to art, because this seems like a good entry point to me, I guess, as somebody who's a runner, but also because it actually is very relevant. So Jack Daniels, who's arguably the best known writer of the competitive running world and also a scientist, is very famous for having popularized the notion that the race doesn't begin until you're 80% of the way through it. Now, this is something that pertains especially to long distance running. And it makes a lot of sense, right? Because at the beginning, it doesn't matter how fast you go at the beginning. It matters when you cross at the end. And it's who has the fuel in the tank and who has the fitness is really going to, where that is going to determine who is competitive. And I also like that in the running world, you're really just competing with yourself, because most people are not born with this like special innate skill. And so really you can work on yourself to get your body to peak performance, and your PBs are this is the short form for personal best, are the marker of your fitness. Now, I like this way of thinking, both as as it pertains to the 20% rule, and as we think about like just competing with yourself, or like building your skills, because I think it's a pretty healthy way of thinking about your art career, and it's just a good model. So like, rather than thinking about like all the different ways that we have failed to achieve our goals, like if we can reframe that to say like, what can we do to produce the best work we can produce, I think it's like a better way of thinking about it. But it's also, in my estimation, it's almost the only way to think about it, right? Because this is the way that you create the most authentic voice for yourself. And when you do that, when you are sort of, I think, honing that voice, part of, I think what this means also for many of us is like thinking about, well, what can we do to get ourselves to the top 20% of like whatever field we're in. Now, I've talked about this in the past, but one of the good things about the 80-20 rule, or the 20-80 rule, whichever, I'm actually not sure which way that's supposed to go, is that like 80% of pretty much everything is crap. So the big thing is you don't want to be in that pile, right? And I've talked about this as it pertains to grants, but one of the big things about grant applications is that most of what anybody looks at is just not that good. So you just want to make sure, and it's either it's not that good because it's not the right thing for the competition, maybe they haven't completed their artist statement that well, or the proposal itself is weak. There are a lot of different ways that you can sort of fumble in the application that makes the application not competitive, even if you are a very strong artist. So part of what you want to do is figure out how to make sure that you're in that 20%. This same thing goes with like making your artwork. How do you make sure that you make consistently good artwork? Well, part of that is making sure that you organize your time and you have a strategy to make sure that the amount of time you are able to spend in your studio is larger than the amount of time that you have to spend other places. And then, also this applies to like, how do I get a gallery? Now, the rules, I think, of how do I get in this 20%, I'm not even sure if rules is the right word, but like I do have like what I would consider sort of like a mental checklist. And a lot of this stuff, to my mind, comes down to just like doing research. So one of the things and a lot of this we all do naturally anyway. So, part of this is like knowing what your lane is in art. I see Nina Kling is here, and she is sort of a great example of somebody who knows, all of the material that I see on Instagram is labeled street art, and she knows all the different hashtags that are appropriate for the field that she is working in. And that makes an enormous difference because she's done the research and she sees results. Nina is not someone that has Nina has really organically grown her following to something that I think has been really successful and large. So, and that in large part is due to the quality of the work and knowing how to place it so that it will get attention. The other thing that I think is really important when you are sort of thinking about how do I be the best version of me or whatever, is to think about, decide which things you are going to be bad at. Because we can't be good at everything, and we now have the option to participate in 5 million different social media platforms. We could be on Clubhouse and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and and Twitter. Which one of these things is the thing you're going to spend more time on than not? Sometimes, social media is not something that we want to spend time on at all. So then the question is, okay, well, what am I going to invest my time in where I know that I will have the fruits of my labors come back? So deciding knowing your lane, number one, is great. Knowing where you're participating and what makes how to position your work, but also being able to decide and be okay with the fact that you will be bad at some things is a perfect way of also just training yourself for basic self-acceptance. I am not going to claim that I am a model at this. I certainly struggle a lot because I think many of us would like to be excel on every single thing that I do, but I have to, for my own sanity, narrow the things that we do and that I do so that I can be good at some things and not mediocre at everything. So I think I've talked a little bit about research, but I think one of the things that when we do research that's really sort of helpful to understand is that when we understand where our work fits in an ecosystem, it narrows the amount of work that we have to do. The truth of the matter is that for most artists, only a handful of galleries are going to be the right fit for them. Most galleries, specialized, and there is a sort of aesthetic that you can see. There are sort of economic rungs, let's say, for all these galleries, and you have to be able to recognize which one of those rungs you sort of fit on so that when you approach galleries, you're approaching the right ones, because nobody wants to waste their time. And if you can minimize the amount of time that you spend doing outreach by doing the research first and then just doing very targeted outreach, your success rate is going to soar. And so that, I think, is super helpful. Now, of course, if anybody has any experiences they want to share in the chat while I'm talking about all this, please drop them in. I think the final thing I wanted to mention is that it is important to recognize that you can't do everything yourself. Navigating the art world is a collaborative process, and I think one of the things that I think there's actually some misunderstanding about is the fact that this collaborative process has always existed. It's not just since, this would happen to be my particular lens, but my particular lens of, Google Drive sharing and this sort of thing makes me think that the world is truly collaborative. But in fact, the nature of networking is that it is collaborative, right? Like, if you are going to openings, if you are joining various memberships or going to certain groups, like I see, we are going to be starting a membership soon. We'll have announcements about that shortly, but also I see that NYC Crit Club is here. They have a really healthy community. There's a lot of these places that you can join and find other like-minded artists to connect with, and those connections, they're really about, the healthy ones anyway, should be about building each other up and helping each other. So your research should really be, like, let's say you want to find a gallery, your research is not just which gallery is the best fit for me, but which of these artists who are represented by the gallery can I connect with, right? Because your entry point into those spaces is always going to be other artists and curators who are connected to the gallery. So you have to find the networks that work for you and find ways to connect with them. And that is when your use of social media, if that is your medium, whatever medium of choice you have with social media, that's when it really comes in handy. Your choice of where you decide to take various courses, like that can help. Which openings you decide to go to. You can't go to them all. So which are the ones that you are going to really spend your time on? All of these things help develop and nurture the career of an artist. And that, when you do that research, that's when you find yourself, if we go back to that 70-80 rule, or not 70-80, 80-20 rule, that's when you find yourself in the 20%, right? Because what you want to be is competitive. But that field, to be competitive, the field has to be very narrow. And so it's just finding the lane that you're in and running it down. And so that, I think, is the real work. And I think the good news and the bad news with that is that it's a lifetime, right? That's the career. And that's something that I usually find kind of rewarding and exciting too, because it means connecting with other people, people who care about the same things you do, people who share your values. That's really exciting. So it's nice to see NYC Crit Club here. If anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to drop them in the chat. This is what these sessions are for. And of course, you can always do it after we close up, because that is what the comment section is for. I'm just going to go through and see what we have here. All right. Okay. One thing I am particularly bad at is just talking to fill space. So I think what that means is that I'm going to close up this session for now. But again, feel free to add something in the chat if you have comments. And I will see you on the interwebs. Bye, everyone.